Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's top 15 worst episodes of Star Wars The Clone Wars. Now this video is in conclusion to my coverage of Star Wars The Clone Wars, where I had reviewed every single episode of The Clone Wars one season at a time, and I'm ending my coverage of The Clone Wars with a pair of videos, my top 15 worst episodes of The Clone Wars and my top 30 best episodes of The Clone Wars. So this video should obviously not be taken as an aside of that I don't like The Clone Wars or that I'm pointing out how horrible it is. It's not. Every single show has its bad episodes out there, and I just picked the worst episodes I could of this show, which I ultimately did enjoy. Now, when I did my review for it, and I covered every episode one season at a time, which I have done for a lot of other shows. However, this is the first show I did it for, which I had actually not seen before making these reviews, so I was watching it for the first time, so I'm maybe not as familiar with the show as I've been with some of the other ones, but as I was watching it, I did keep track of the episodes I really didn't like and the ones I did like, so I could do these worst and best list at the end. So overall, I was never that huge fan of Star Wars The Clone Wars. I was very hesitant to watch it for a while because I thought it was just like a cartoon. And then later on I was like, there was way too much there and I felt daunting trying to watch it all. But yeah, eventually I went around to it and I did in fact like it, which I'll get a lot more into when I get into my favorite episodes of the show. But it did have its downsides, and there were parts of it which I thought really did not work, and so that's what this video is here for, to get into my top 15 least favorite episodes of Star Wars The Clone Wars. So now, as I mentioned, I've done these top 10 or top 30, top 40 best worst episode lists for a lot of shows. This Clone Wars presented a bit of a problem because each episode is, well, they do have some standalone episodes, but some episodes they have a lot of arcs that take place over 3 or 4 episodes, and then they even have some two-parters, which is a bit challenging because it makes me wonder, should I count the entire arc as one episode or not? Because when we have serialized shows like Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, it's actually quite easy because even though each episode is not part of the whole, all the episodes follow the same format, so I can compare them. Same thing with an episodic show like Star Trek Next Generation. But I also encountered this problem with Star Trek Enterprise because they had a lot of 3-parters and arcs in their final season. However, Clone Wars is even worse because they have a lot of 4-parters and 3-parters and these arcs throughout the entire show, and there's a lot of them. And so I toyed with calling each arc one episode, but then I found I couldn't make it work because well, first of all, I couldn't come up with 15 worst. I would have to boil it down, and same thing with the best. I would have to boil that down to a smaller amount as well because I just wouldn't have that many episodes that I would think would fit in either best or worst category. And the other thing is I just found it weird comparing like a 4-parter to a singular standalone episode. It was like apples and oranges. So ultimately, I did decide to group each episode individually, even if it was part of a larger arc, which still does make it different from a standalone episode because I'm just taking one piece of the story and comparing it to a story that stands on its own. But whatever, I found that was the only way to make it work, and you'll probably find this more in my best list as well, is that you'll find a lot of episodes from the same arc on this list because of that. And it sort of like fattens out this list, and maybe you seem a bit repetitive at sometimes, but honestly, I found that's the only way I could make it work, so this is what I decided to go with. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, I gave every episode that I watched a rating between 1 and 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. And doing this top 15 worst list, my rating will pop up before I cover the episodes that have that particular rating. So I'll start with the rating of a 4, then I'll go down to the 3, and then the 2, and then we'll get to the 1 where my absolute worst. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and get started with my top 15, with my number 15 least favorite episode of Star Wars Clone Wars, Dangerous Debt, which is episode 7 of season 7. Now this is a part of a four-parter saga where we're introduced to the Martinez sisters. It shows what Ahsoka had been doing throughout the events of season 6, which she was not present for. Now, these episodes are apparently really, really hated by fans, and apparently a lot of fans cannot stand the Martinez sisters, Trace and Rala. I didn't have a problem with them, in fact, and I thought I didn't understand the hatred towards them or these episodes. I thought ultimately, I thought these episodes were fine. However, this one in particular, which is the only one I singled out from the saga, Dangerous Debt, I just didn't like it because I thought it was a completely unnecessary episode, that it was just repeating the same beats over and over again. Because, alright, so Ahsoka and the sisters got captured by the Pikes because they kind of fucked things up. And then in the final episode of the saga, they, find a way to escape and find a way to defeat the Pikes. But this episode was... And I found that Clone Wars actually does this a lot, so maybe I'll mention this later on in this. But they stretch out these 3-parters or 4-parters too much. Like, it could have just been 2 or 3 episodes. And this is definitely a prime example of that, where this episode was completely and utterly unnecessary. It starts with them captured, and they escape, and they get captured again, and they escape, and they get captured again, and then the episode ends with them captured again. So it's like you could have just completely omitted this episode, and it wouldn't have made any difference. In fact, it would have been better. It felt like a more succinct saga, and I have a feeling that part of the reason why people hate this saga and these characters so much is because of that, because they stretched it out a lot longer and made it a lot longer than was necessary, and it felt repetitive because they're repeating the same beats. So anyway, that is my number 15. So then we'll move over to my number 14, A Test of Strength, which is season 5, episode 7. Now this is a part of a 4-part saga, which I will get back to several times during this top 15 worst, because I completely did not like this at all. It had to do with these younglings that Ahsoka was training, and they had to build their own lightsaber, and I just hated them, and it was goofy and silly, and I'll get more into that later. But this episode in particular, this is the second episode in the 4-parter that dealt with, they're going to build their lightsabers, but then Hondo, whatever his name is, the pirate character, who, by the way, I also really do not like. I never liked this character. It's a cartoon, I know, but he seemed too cartoonish for me. And here's the thing, this whole 4-parter felt like, a typical cartoon. It's what you'd have in a cartoon, and some people might argue, well, Mark, Clone Wars is a cartoon. However, you have many other episodes that are very clearly not for kids and very clearly geared towards adults, such as, which I'll get into more in my best list, such as the Night Sisters one, which is really freaking disturbing, or the later saga that ends the show in season 7 with, and it's always been a lot of bloody, gore and killing, in the show. And so at best, I think it's geared towards, if you want to say kids, you could say young adults, like 13 through 17 range. Like, but this four-parter is geared to like 8-year-olds or 7-year-olds, and so it seems completely out of place. It's goofy, and I have no compunctions of calling it out and calling it as bad for being so goofy and childish, even though because I think the argument, it's just a kid's show, does not hold, since at best this show is geared towards late teenagers and not 7-year-olds, which this four-parter is. And plus the character of Hondo is like a goofy cartoon character who I don't like, and this episode deals with him and the other pirates raiding the ship, and the kids like coming up with Home Alone shenanigans in order to defeat him, and it was just dumb and goofy, and I absolutely did not like it. Alright, so now we'll move over to my number 13, which is Rookies, which is Season 1, Episode 5. Now, this is the first episode of the show that I really did not like. It's only the 5th episode of the entire show. This had to do with these clones, and had a group who were just rookies, and they called them shinies, and like, oh yeah, men in battle, yeah, your armor's still shiny, you're shiny. And I thought it was really dumb. Like, I really didn't care for it. I had no interest in these characters whatsoever. Now, to be a little bit fair, this introduced characters like Rex. Like, I'm sure he appeared before this episode, but it sort of focused on, it was the first to focus on him, and he would become an important character going forward. And but at the time when I first saw this, I didn't know that, and I didn't know who this was, and I didn't care about them. And I still, even looking at it on retrospect, I still don't really care. Like, especially on the new characters, the shinies, and I just thought the way this whole episode unfolded was very stereotypical, and just did not enjoy it. So then we'll move over to my my number 12 worst episode of the Clone Wars, and that is The Senate Murders, Season 2, Episode 15. So this is a very stereotypical cliche murder mystery where this senator, then one of those green dudes, is murdered, and they're trying to figure out who did it, and there's this investigator who's a moron, and he talks in a very annoying voice, who I don't really care for. Very cartoon-like. Yes, I know it's a cartoon, but still, come on. It still annoys me. And so it's a very cliche murder mystery, and I figured out who did it like 10 minutes before it was revealed. It was so obvious, and by the time they did, and they called her, it was like, I did it, it was me. It was like, that's just a cliche of that I cannot stand. Anyway, we'll get into my number 11, which is Missing in Action. So, this deals with a four-parter I'm going to be talking a lot about in Season 5 that I think was absolutely horrendous. Is the one where they had these droids went on a mission, and none of them really spoke. They all just beeped and beeped and beeped, and you had R2-D2 there as a hero droid, and then you had this annoying green dude who had like this stereotypical military-esque southern accent, and he was annoying as hell. And you pair him with this other droid, the only one who could actually talk was a bumbling moron who actively messed everything up. And so this was the most annoying like four-parter or saga in the entire show, and the fact that they had 4 episodes, like every time I tune into the next episode, I think it would be done. I'm like, oh no, they're still sticking with these idiots. Like, it really grated on my nerves beyond belief. Now, there is the final one in the arc didn't make my top 15 worse because it was somewhat interesting and had a somewhat suspenseful ending. This one is the next least offensive one because it features a storyline about a clone who is working as a chef, and he doesn't realize he's a clone until these droids, try to make him aware of this, which is somewhat interesting, but still does not alleviate how annoying these fucking droids are and how much I cannot stand them. Alright. As I said, I'll have plenty of opportunities to talk about that more next. We'll get into my number 10 worst episode of the show, and that is The Box. Season 4, episode 17. Now, this is one of those episodes I'm sure a lot of people might disagree with me on. This is part of a 4-parter that I actually like. I think you'll find some episodes in this 4-parter in my best list. This one makes my worst list because, again, similar to what I said about Dangerous Debt, this episode was completely unnecessary and did not need to exist, and they could have just jumped straight from the second part to the 4th part. You did not need this. Moreover, I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. So, it was like, I know this came out before Squid Game, but I haven't seen that recently. It was very Squid Game-esque, where there's this box of murder that the idea is that Dooku and some dude want to hire a bounty hunter for a job, but they want to ensure that they have the best. I think they have a couple, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, but they want to make sure they have the best bounty hunters. So they put like 15 bounty hunters in this box, and they know that only 1 or 2 of them are going to survive. And so they willingly go into this box just for one fucking job. Granted, it's a lot of money, but still, they know that they have like a 1 in 10 chance of dying, and yet they still agree to this. And also, this seems like a really ridiculous way of, like, finding the best bounty hunter. You gotta kill off, like, a whole bunch of bounty hunters in order to find the best one. And it's pretty, like, all the bounty hunters who go on there are pretty obtuse because they still, like, are, like, working together and having this team spirit, even though they all know that, most of them are going to die, and only 1 or 2 of them are going to get out alive. And it was so ridiculous, just the whole concept of it. Why are you going to put these bounty hunters in a fucking box and kill them all just to find the best ones? That seems like a really inefficient way to come across it. Why not just look at the bounty hunters' records and determine them that way? Hey, here's a stunning idea. Why not do fucking interviews? Sit down and talk to them. Like, this is stupid. Like, no one would do this. This is so incredibly impractical. It just boggles my mind. Anyway, next we'll move over to number 9, The Gathering, and this is getting back to that 4-parter with the younglings in season 5. God, season 5 was, yeah. And most of these in my top 15 are from season 5. But anyway, this one is the first one in that 4-parter that shows the younglings go into a cave and they gotta find the element they need to make their yeah, sorry. So this episode not only was stupid and aimed towards 7-year-olds, it was boring. Like, I literally fell asleep during this episode. Like, I'm not exaggerating, being hyperbolic. It was so boring I fell asleep. This episode, sucked. Anyway, next episode on my list. Talking about those stupid droids again. Oh no, not yet. Sorry. This one's going back to C-3PO and R2-D2. Number 8 on my list is Nomad Droids, Season 4, Episode 6. So there was this two-parter that was actually, the first part was actually decent and featured R2-D2 and C-3PO, and they go to this planet and there's like these tiny little cute creatures that go and and there's like R2-D2 and C-3PO like stumble across this mystery where there's these underground gods whatever that live on the planet and they help broker peace. Like that was decent. That was a good episode. I kind of liked it. And it should have ended it there, but for some reason they decided to tack on this episode to R2-D2 and C-3PO from finishing that mission, get attacked, their ship gets attacked, and they end up having to escape on the shuttle pod, and they go to this planet, and there's these tiny little creatures that, you know, acting all tough, and like R2-D2 just like steps on their leader and kills them or something. And then there's and then they go from that planet to a different planet where a bunch of other nonsense happens, and they go from that planet to a different planet where all this more nonsense happens, and it was so like pointless and annoying and unnecessary and just not funny and just like they should. I don't know why they didn't just stop with that one episode. That one episode is all you needed. This one was awful. So next we get into my number 7, the XyloB Strikes Back. So this again is the second part, or maybe the third part, I can't remember. I think it's 2. Anyway, it's a conclusion to the story arc where there's this humongous ancient beast on this planet that was like killing people, and it was like unearthed from the deep below. And Palpatine gets a great idea to capture it and bring it back to Coruscant. Where as soon as he did that, and this episode begins with the monster like in a laboratory and Coruscant being examined, and like of course, like as soon as this episode started, I knew, well, obviously the monster's gonna get free and start wreaking havoc like Godzilla around Coruscant. That's exactly what happens. Very predictable and not that interesting. However, this episode actively like bothers me because of the way that Palpatine is treating this animal, really, who didn't ask to be brought to this planet, who just wants to go home, and is treating him like shit, and is constantly like, kill it, and he's acting so evil, and it's annoying to me how obtuse the Jedi are for not realizing just how evil, like, and it seems like Obi-Wan can sense that this, you know, is just an animal that they shouldn't just kill, and that it's, you know, it's not really doing anything wrong. Yet he still goes along with kind of Palpatine and allowing Palpatine to like kill it, and doesn't even sense with his fucking Jedi senses or whatever that Palpatine is clearly being evil here. And you know what? And that's why this episode bothers me, because I'm actually rooting for the XyloB Beast in this episode, and I'm really pissed off that all these assholes kill it. I mean, sure, cool, it wreaks havoc and knocks down buildings or whatever, but boy, this shouldn't have been brought to this fucking planet in the first place anyway. So, I really don't like this episode. Now we get to my number 6 worst episode of the Clone Wars, and that is Hostage Crisis, Season 1, Episode 22. Now, this is another episode I suspect a lot of people might disagree with me on. This is a season finale for Season 1, where Cad Bane, I believe his name is, I think this is his first appearance, too, where he goes and does like a heist, I guess you would call it, in the Senate. He like captures a room full of senators, including Padme, call her that, and Organa and all of them. And here's the thing about this episode that drives me bonkers. It drives me off the walls. Is that The bounty hunters attack this building, which has armed guards, like not even clones, and broad daylight in the middle of the city where a lot of people can clearly see them. And they use guns, they shoot at people, there's a huge firefight, they like kill some of these guards, and they put a huge ruckus getting into the building, and they get inside the building, and no alarms go off! No alarms! No one's even aware, like the fucking Chancellor Palpatine's just sitting in his office, like drinking his tea, going, ooh, it's a normal day, nothing's happening. And there's a fucking firefight going on right outside the building, and no one's aware of this. Like, this drives me crazy. Like, and that's I could not get past this, and the fact that they go into the building and they manage to go all the way up to a certain floor and sneak in with the room with all the senators and hold them hostage. It never should happen. Like, I can't move beyond that point. That this should not have happened. Like, there was all this, like, commotion. If you start a huge firefight in broad daylight in the middle of a huge city on a government building with a lot of high-ranking government officials on it, someone's gonna fucking notice. Like, someone's gonna set the alarm. And I don't want to hear it's just a cartoon. That's just, no. I cannot get past that. That just actively pisses me the hell off. And I just don't like Cad Bane, to be honest. I never did, and I don't like that stupid Hutt Zaru, who's like the only Hutt that instead of going solo, talks like with a freaking Cajun accent. Oh man! Like, what the hell is that? Like, what the hell is this? I don't know. So I don't like it. Anyway, we'll now move over to my top 5 worst episodes of the Clone Wars. Starting with my number 5, Evil Plans, Season 3, Episode 8. Now, despite the fact this takes place in Season 3, 2 whole seasons later, this is actually the prequel to the episode I just talked about, the one that builds up how Cad Bane got the plans of the government building, and I suppose this is supposed to retroactively be an excuse on how he was able to infiltrate the Senate building so well, because he had the plans, he knew how to circumvent their security. I'm not buying a lick of that, because they started a firefight in broad daylight. I don't care how well his fucking plans are. They do not negate the fact that he started a firefight in broad daylight. Anyway, that's not why I don't like this episode. This episode has its own other ball of issues. It's stupid. It's basically our R2-D2 and C-3PO go out to get supplies, and C-3PO is kidnapped by Cad Bane, and he's tortured. And meanwhile, R2-D2 like goes to the spa for droids, and is like living it up. And they're trying to play it like it's a comedy, because they juxtapose like C-3PO like getting like electric shocked and screaming in pain and agony. Oh my god, that's so hilarious. And they juxtapose that with R2-D2 like having the time of his life, like living it up in the spa. I don't find that funny. I don't care if he's just a droid. I don't find a sentient being being tortured funny. And then their memories get erased and they're thrown back in, and everyone's like, oh, what took you so long to get your supplies? And haha, isn't that funny? Isn't that hilarious? They were tortured and had their memories wiped and were just like left for dead. Isn't that I'm boiling over with laughter here. Anyway, I could not stand this episode. I thought it absolutely sucked. Next, my number 4 worst episode of the Clone Wars is getting back to those stupid droids in Season 5. Secret Weapons, which is Season 5, Episode 10. It's the first episode in this arc, and this is where that, I talked about how they had that annoying tiny creature who talked with a southern accent, and it was like this stereotypical like Marine general, but except in a comical and goofy way. This is when he got his team together of droids that just go beep, 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 except for the one who's a total moron, and the one that's a total moron actively fucks everything up. Like, seriously, like, you have a mission that's straightforward, and he, like, fucks it up by piloting the ship and not being where he's supposed to be, and then so they get stuck in this other situation, and he fucks that up, and so they get put in, like, every problem, every crisis of this episode is a result of that droid fucking up and continually being a moron and calling he's calling the colonel corporate or some shit, and like that's supposed to be funny, and it's just annoying as all hell. Like, I really cannot stand this episode at all. So we'll now move over to my number 3 worst episode of Clone Wars, and that is Bound for Rescue, which is getting back to that other crappy 4-parter in Season 5. This is Season 5, Episode 8. This is the one with the younglings. This is, I think, the worst episode of the batch, because Ahsoka is captured by Hondo and the pirates, who, again, I don't like these characters. And so the younglings decide to go in and rescue Ahsoka by pretending to be a circus performers who put on this acrobat performance for the pirates. Like, the pirates just happen to have these annual circus entertainers come and entertain them, because of course they do. Of course they do. What illegal pirate who is like running from the law and smuggling all sorts of illegal contraband and, like, you know, shooting people and killing people, of course they're going to have a circus come and perform just for them. I mean, obviously. So the younglings pretend to be acrobats and perform, and meanwhile Hondo's sitting there laughing it up, going, "Oh, this is so much fun." That's so dumb! This is so stupid. What is this show for 5-year-olds now? Like, what the hell? Like, this show was so, like, gritty and bloody, and I would think give even 12-year-olds nightmares, and then we goes from that to this total bullshit. Anyway, we'll now move over to my number 2 worst episode of the Clone Wars, and that is Bounty Hunters. Finally getting away from those Season 5 4-parters. This is Season 2, Episode 17. So this is basically a Seven Samurai, or the Magnificent Seven, if you will, ripoff. Something that The Mandalorian did repeatedly nonstop in its first 2 seasons, and this is probably one of the more bland, boring, stereotypical, and just nonsensical examples of your basic, the villagers are being harassed by these pirates, and so we're going to hire these people to come in and save us and teach the village how to save themselves. And of course it features Hondo, of course, who, as I mentioned, I cannot stand, and he is being completely obtuse for purposes of the plot when Obi-Wan and Anakin appear and, like, look, you know, we're going to protect this village, you should go away. Realistically, and if these characters follow any logic and consistency, Hondo would be like, yeah, absolutely, this isn't worth it. They don't really have that much money for me to, like, bullying these villagers is not a big enough return on my investment for me to have to deal with Jedi who will most likely defeat me easily. So I'm going to walk away. So that's what he does, of course. No, of course not! Because we need a fucking stupid plot that's just like the Magnificent Seven. So he's completely obtuse and acts like a complete moron. He's like, no, I'm going to bully these people anyway, blah, 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 and acts like a complete and utterly out of character and like a moron and attacks Obi-Wan and everyone else. And oh my God, Obi-Wan defeats him. Isn't that shocking? I'm so shocked. I'm so surprised that this fucking episode turned out the exact same way every other episode in existence that constantly rips off the Magnificent Seven. I'm sick of seeing this storyline. Alright, so now let me get to my number one worst episode of Star Wars The Clone Wars, the only episode to get a 1 out of 10 from me, that it has absolutely no value in it whatsoever. And this is going back to the four-parter with the stupid droids. This is the worst in the bunch, and I think the worst in the entire show. This is called A Sunny Day in the Void. This is Season 5, Episode 11. So, yeah, we have that little green Marine stereotype, and then we have that bumbling idiot who just fucks everything up droid, and a bunch of other droids going beep, 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 who can't even talk, trapped in the desert, wandering around, and of course the bumbling idiot just fucks things up for them. It makes it even worse, while meanwhile the green dude is just being aggravating, acting like, oh, how dare you do this. It was one of the most nerve-grating, nerve-wracking, like absolutely annoying things that I've ever had to sit through in my entire life, and I hope never to have to endure that ever again. Like, this is so beneath the Clone Wars, which otherwise is an amazing show, very complex show, often dealing with adult themes, and that do better characterization of characters like Anakin and Obi-Wan and Padme than even the prequel movies did. Like, in many ways, Clone Wars is better than the prequels. It's more fleshed out. And so a show that complex and well written does not deserve to have an episode like this. That is just garbage. It's just garbage. It's annoying garbage. Anyway, that is it for my top 15 worst episodes of Star Wars The Clone Wars. I hope this video did not bother you too much, and sorry for all the yelling. I just get really excited with these crazily bad episodes. But I do hope you tune in and watch my top 30 best episodes of Star Wars The Clone Wars, because then I'll get into why I love the show so much and to some of the best episodes of the show. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check out my channel as I cover many other shows such as Better Call Saul, all things Star Trek, The Expanse, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.